So what we now have is we have now 1/2 of the midsection, which now needs to get cut into ribs and into our rack or into the loin part that will give us our loin chops and our classical lamb chops. In order to do that, we need to separate a certain amount of rib from the loin. The question is how much? The classical way, one measures double the size of the eye. Right, so this is one size, second size. So this is where we will cut our chops. And again, this part is done with our butcher's saw. This can also be done with a cleaver, which I do not prefer doing because it tends to splinter the bone, whereas by cutting it with a saw I get a nice clean cut without any splinters. So now we have our classical rib, which after a little trimming will serve as typical lamb ribs. Right, let us proceed first by preparing our lamb ribs. This again will involve trimming off excess gristle, fat, and any markings from our grading stamp. Typically this skin, because the meat underneath it is so thin, one wants to try and pull off rather than cutting off to keep as much of the meat And here now we have a typical lamb rib, which after parboiling and then grilling, the meat will pull away from the bones at the top section, revealing them, making them look almost like a French trim. What is very popular nowadays is to take these lamb ribs and prepare them as a sous vide style. They come very, very tender, they shrink a lot less, and they lose a lot less of its fat. So the meat itself becomes a lot more juicy and moist. The balance of the belly can be used by collecting a number of them and then placing 5, 6, 7 of those on top of each other and rolling them up as a lamb belly roast. So one would take, I've got one from our first loin, from my second loin goes next to it, 5, 6 stacks on top of each other, rolled up, and trussed would become a lamb belly roast. So first section, lamb belly, lamb rib.